Hey everybody, it's Courtney and I am back with another design team project for Trinity stamps. Today we're going to be creating a very clean and simple one-layer card using the Lady Liberty stamp set. I'm starting off with a piece of Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock. This is cut down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and this is 1-inch post-it note tape here, and I am just masking out either side and top and bottom, just using the edge of my cardstock to kind of line that up. We're going to be doing some ink blending right there in the center, so you want to make sure that your masks are lined up pretty well. Next, I will stamp my little Lady Liberty there, right there in the center. Towards the bottom with Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink, I'm going to be Copic coloring her. And I'll also mask her out with a piece of Simon Says Stamp masking paper. I wanted to create kind of like a night scene behind her, so I'm going to be using some darker distress inks, and I'm using regular distress inks here. I'll be using Faded Jeans, Chipped Sapphire, and Black Soot. My initial plan was to kind of keep a highlight around the flame of her torch, so I'm starting with my Faded Jeans. This is such a small area that I ended up going over the entire thing, losing that highlight, so feel free to totally skip that step. Next, I'll go over the entire area with the Chipped Sapphire. Then I add a little bit of the Black Soot right there to the top. Then go back in with my Chipped Sapphire to blend that out. Now you'll see in some of those little areas, my masks are coming up. So when that happens, I go in the direction of the mask. So I'm working from the bottom up to avoid them from peeling up any further. Once that was done, I took some shimmer spray and I'm just using the nozzle there to splatter that in the background and dab that up with a paper towel. This will just give the illusion of having stars in the background. Next, I remove my masks, and you just want to be careful when your paper is a little bit wet. I usually don't have a problem with regular distress inks, but if I'm using oxide, sometimes my mask might peel up some of the cardstock. So you may want to give it a minute or two to dry before you peel up your masks. For the little areas that my mask was peeling up and I got some of that distress ink on there, I just took a damp paintbrush and just added a little bit of water. You don't want to add too much, and dab that up with a paper towel. It's not going to take up everything, but it'll take up enough. Next, we'll move on to the Copic coloring. I am coloring her all of the same color. She's going to be completely green. I am starting off with my lightest color here. This is a YG41, and I'm just mapping out my darkest areas. My darkest areas will be where her clothing is kind of folded over and laying over itself, and underneath her hair, underneath her hand there, or over her hand, I guess, where she's holding the book. You're going to put your shadows in the same exact places that you normally would as if you were coloring this in several different colors. You're just using all one color. I typically start with my lightest color for two reasons. One, it saturates the paper. The more saturated the paper is, the better blend you're going to get with any alcohol marker. And number two, if I lay down my color where I don't want it to be, it's easily covered up because it's your lightest color. Once that was down, I moved on to my darkest color. This is a G46, and I'm pretty much just going over those same areas. I've already mapped out my darkest areas, so I'm just covering up the same places where I put my lightest color down. Some of these areas are kind of intricate, so you just want to make sure that you're just using the very tip of your marker. You don't want to put too much darker color down because you'll lose that highlight. Once my darkest color was down, I'll move on to my midtone. Now we're only using a 3-color blend for her. My midtone color is a YG45, and it's actually pretty similar to the G46. Even though they're different color families, one's a YG and one's a G, the last number is similar, so they will blend well together. I'm just going to basically thicken up these lines a little bit, extend those out. I'm not doing really any flicks here. I'm just using straight lines with the exception of these little lines that are within the stamped image. These lines that are part of your illustration, they're there to help you to know where your shadows and highlights should be. So whenever you have a stamped image with these lines, use them to your advantage. They're there to help you. Once I had my mid-tone color down, I colored her completely in with my lightest color again, the YG41. Now where her little flame is on her torch, I did not do any shading on that because we're going to be adding some yellow and orange to that. I just put my lightest color down. So right now that flame there only has the YG41. For the flame, like I said, we're going to be adding some yellows and oranges to make it look like it is burning. So I start with my Y08 and just flick up a little bit of that color from the bottom up. And then I'll go in with my YR68 just to add a little bit of darkness to just the very base of the flame, and then blend that back out with my Y08, and then go over the entire thing again with that YG41. Next, I wanted to add a few little stars in the background. And I'm using my anti-static tool here because especially we use distress inks, they take a while to dry. You want to make sure that your embossing powder is only going to stick to where you want it to. I am using Versamark ink here and just stamping a couple of the stars in the background. And I'm using Cloud 9 embossing powder by Wow. This is a glitter embossing powder. It's kind of a silvery clear color. I didn't want to take too much away from the image, but I did, of course, want a little bit of sparkle in my background. I went ahead and heat set that, and I did also add a little bit of shimmer to the flame on her torch there. Now for this sentiment, I want to stamp this in red because I kind of want a red, white, and blue patriotic colors going on. So I'm stamping with Hero Arts ink here. This is, I'll link it below. I don't remember the color. Stamping part of my sentiment there on the top, and I'll stamp the rest of it on the bottom. I did want a border on my card here, so I'm going to trim down a little bit on each side. You want to make sure that you're not just trimming off one side here. You want to do all four sides so that your center is still centered. Once that was trimmed down, I took a red A2 size note card, one that best matched that ink, and I'll use my Tombow Mono multi-glue to adhere that flat. You can see my paper got a little bit warped because I did not heat up my heat tool before taking it to the paper like I should have. So I just laid this under something flat just to make sure it adhered well and flat and didn't kind of bubble up. And that is the card for today, guys. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye.